It's definitely over. Except for that one.
The terrible Ice Age 5. With Disney now producing their own entry into the franchise, by which I mean the 6th installment of the Ice Age series, I think it's time we go back to where we left things off. That's right, we're looking at the 2016 cult classic Ice Age Collision Course, i.e. the one with the asteroids. And before you think Ice Age 6 is much too soon, believe it or not, it'll be a 10-year time gap between these two installments. Unless you count the Buck Wild spin-off TV movie on Disney+, but I don't think we need to unpack that whole car crash again, do we? We open with Scrat doing his best Minion impression and hanging around the studio's logo. Rest in peace, Blue Sky, of course. Maybe the 6th one will feature an in memoriam for the studio. I doubt. Though it is kind of interesting having him in the logo, as we usually expect him to pop up seconds into the actual movie. However, we soon see why as we begin a galactic backdrop being narrated by Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Since the beginning of time.
Have I put on the right movie? Of course, we get the epic build-up to funny character intro, zooming into Scrat. Kind of feel like this would have been funnier if we hadn't literally just seen him on the Blue Sky logo. We've already seen him, you know, so the impact's not as strong. Beyond that, despite this being what introduces the ridiculous Collision Course storyline, I do quite enjoy the opening here. It sits perfectly in line with all of the other Scrat cold opens. And yes, it's the flying saucer from the first movie getting paid off. Very clever. It's probably, actually, the closest we've had to that old slapstick Looney Tunes short in modern mainstream movies. Though it looks like that's going to change with the actual Looney Tunes movie coming this year, which I'd of course rather be watching that right now. But as far as sequences depicting prehistoric squirrels causing planetary alignments in a flying saucer go, this is pretty fun. Maybe the best part of the whole movie. On its own, this would be a solid Scrat short. It's just a shame about the movie that follows it. There's some genuinely creative gags going on here, like the planets breaking into alignment like balls on a pool table, sound effect genuinely included there. It's bang on old style cartoons. You'd almost expect to see Marvin the Martian pop up, although this bit's a choice. However, overall, some solid gags just at a ridiculous cosmic level. Even the asteroids getting pushed towards Earth is caused by a callback to him stuffing his nut into the ground. Cue a movie title intro that's honestly better than the rest of the movie, as we cut to Manny and Peaches playing ice hockey. Yeah, remember their names? We're gonna have to learn this again.
Blazing Mammoth takes it on the breakaway. There's never been a player so tough.
Whilst the two most annoying characters in the series do commentary. I'm sure there are some Crash and Eddie stands out there. I've just never really liked them, and the latest Disney Plus movie really didn't help that.
Hey, what's that stink I smell out there? It's Manny! You stink!
Oh god, no. Even in the second one, which I liked, they got on my nerves a little bit, I'll be honest. Is that a hot take? I mean, at least they had a narrative function in that movie, brainwashing a mammoth into thinking she's a possum. Remember that storyline? We've had a whole lifetime go by since then, with Manny and Ellie's daughter now a full-on teenager. Which just leaves me wondering if we're going to be meeting Shrek's 3 now young adult children in Shrek 5 next year. And if you're wondering why I'm worrying about that, it's partly because this movie and the Ice Age ensemble problem. Every movie, the cast has just gotten bigger. We began with Manny, Sid, Diego, and a human baby. Remember when humans were acknowledged in these movies? We then had Ellie and her 2 annoying stepbrothers as an escalation for the second movie. Fine. But then they stayed. The mammoth had a kid, Buck Wild turned up, Sid's granny now hanging around, Diego's got a girlfriend, and we get to a point where each movie just looked for some kind of reason to split the main 3 from, to say it outright, the women and children. They're either doing that or just padding more onto the main cast, of which we'll be getting a little bit of both of from this movie. But hey, at least they didn't add more humans. I do like the theory that the Ice Age stories is actually going in reverse, so humans are the last part of that sort of era, and at the very beginning, asteroid. For now though, we just have these burdens to deal with, interrupting what would have otherwise just been a nice father-daughter bonding moment. But no, we're gonna have the spare character wiggling their butts. And it just gets better.
What is it? Hole-in-one! Whoa! Woo!
Yay! More additional characters! My favorite thing this franchise does. Yes, because this movie gifts us with Julian, a boyfriend for Peaches now. We're a long way from the days of mammoths being this super rare thing. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt. At the very least, I like Manny's reaction to his newfound sense of redundancy as a parent. It's It's kind of touching as he holds those two hockey sticks. A mammoth with hockey sticks being a ridiculous concept notwithstanding. I mean, after the holiday special, both Christmas and Santa canonically exist millennia before Jesus was a thing. So I don't think we should get too hung up on that. That only lasts seconds though, as Ellie comes along with Sid's grandma. Oh great, she's still around. I feel like they didn't even need to have her join the herd at the end of the last movie. Better still, they could have just killed her off screen. Give Sid some emotions to deal with or something. Oh, maybe that's a bit far, but you know, I'm just not a fan of this incredibly bloated herd.
Didn't know sucking was a strategy.
She doesn't even provide like a balance to the car. She's just as loud and annoying as the possums. Speaking of which,
Let's show him how it's done.
I just cannot with these guys. Also, this just brings us round to another one of those scenes where the characters are just all kind of standing around talking with some ambiguously emotional score in the background. They do it a lot in these later installments, usually because they just have so many characters to deal with. We then get this kind of static, meandering meet the parents bit, with Julian being as obnoxious as everybody else.
My guru, my rock, my main mammoth.
I'm starting to think Manny is just me at this point. I feel sorry he has to put up with all this.
It's been so long since anyone's given me flowers.
My friend, you'd still be living as a possum eating poop if this guy hadn't turned up. Also, mammoth bouquets are now a thing as well, apparently. Also, mammoth marriage. Because yes, our guy Julian here is marrying Peaches now. Hey, this is a universe where a squirrel just split an asteroid the size of a planet after previously splitting the continent, so I think anything goes here, but even still, you can tell this is the 5th movie. Although, just that sentence does make me long for that first movie that was just an absurd take on prehistory. It still had the silly stuff happening, but at least it had one step in the period it was based on, which honestly was how my child self became familiar with the Ice Age, through that movie, as strange and warped as it is. And I'm glad it was that movie, because this one would have left me thinking that marriage descended from mammoths. And apparently there's another thing happening too.
Have you told them about our decision yet?
No.
Is there some kind of mammoth mortgage scheme they're gonna do? In fact, there's another thing, as Ellie and Peaches are preparing some kind of surprise for Manny. And in case you wanted to know how a mammoth blew kisses... And if that wasn't enough family politics for you, they also reinforce that Ellie's missing the early days of her relationship. And that's just the mammoths. Let's get over to Sid.
Will you be my mate?
Oh, for God's sake. Looks like we're getting a big thematic jump into weddings for this one. However, in this case, Sid's love interest at least has the decency to acknowledge there's too many characters in this damn movie.
I'm breaking up with you.
And to be fair, this bit's quite funny.
Our wedding? Our kids? Our burial plot?
But for old Francine here, the sloth's a bit too clingy. I mean, to be fair, that's a sloth's main gig, so I don't know what she expected.
You look nothing like your profile picture.
I have so many questions. On to the reunion of the main three, and of course, there's a Stone Age bar going on for the lads to get together.
Women.
Women.
Because don't forget, Diego has a girlfriend now too. That's now around 10 characters at the very least attached to the core cast, which leaves the main three talking about all of their relationships.
Hey, let me guess. She dumped you.
Kind of wild, this movie's about to kick off into a full-on asteroid plotline with how pedestrian the whole thing's been so far. We've dedicated a full 10 minutes just to family drama. But not to worry, we then transition from this bar scene about
Women.
back to Scrat in the spacesuit. Already, this movie's tone is absolutely all over the place. Again, this sequence is fine, you know, there's no dialogue, and the movie works a lot better whenever that happens. Instead, we get a whole slapstick routine with changing states of gravity, which are far more engaging and interesting than the mammoth wedding stuff. Even having one moment where his skin falls off. Got some full-on SpongeBob humor happening here. The Scrat bits have always been a highlight of the movie, but here they are actively the only great bits of the movie. In fact, it kind of feels like they came up with the Scrat subplot before what the other characters are actually going to be doing. Yeah, I guess they'll just have to deal with asteroids this time. And that time is now as they begin crashing down to Earth. But let's forget about that for a moment so we can see how Manny forgetting his wedding anniversary plays out. My favorite. I just can't believe they've managed to make the central theme of Ice Age Collision Course about marriage.
He forgot!
To be fair, I'm pretty sure marriage was never mentioned as a thing in this franchise until this movie, so fair enough. Hey, maybe the whole franchise is through the lens of Manny's perspective, and we never heard about the marriage because he always forgot about it. You know, it's an elephant that never forgets, not a mammoth. They make that joke in the movie, don't they? Did they make that joke in the movie? I was kind of half only paying attention. Whatever the case, the asteroids are here to conveniently look like fireworks, apparently another thing that exists on prehistoric Earth. And Manny just kind of goes along with it, all the while Diego and Shira begin talking about their own children. Just piling on all the marriage and children subplots in this one, aren't we? Every main character needs to have a partner and a baby by the time we're done here. Strike that, even one of the babies is now grown up and is getting married. In fact,
I'm really gonna miss you guys when we leave.
yeah, we're doing the moving out storyline too. Honestly, good, because this cast needs some space. There are far too many damn characters. But yes, much to Manny's horror, Peaches and Julian want to travel the world. Unless the world ends, of course, which... Meteor shower! Apparently they know what that is. Man, humans are very old school for not even knowing what a volcano was during Pompeii. Of course, immediately exposing that Manny had no idea what was going on, but that really shouldn't be the main point of concern in this situation.
I suppose this is all part of your magic show for me?
Ah, okay, I was wrong. This sequence even has the gall to throw an asteroid at Crash and Eddie and not kill them. Finding shelter and Sid acquiring fire nipples, the herd move underground as the planet gets pummeled by asteroids. Meanwhile, because they haven't been through enough already, one of the asteroids pierces through to the dinosaur underworld from the third movie. Again, the lore of the Ice Age movies is absolutely mental at this point, but also, can we stop digging up the past? Literally? Oh, also, one of the flying ones is voiced by Nick Offerman, of course.
Son, sometimes I wonder how you snuck into this family.
Which immediately says to me that they're going to be notably involved going forwards. Or that Buck Wild is back and he's about to have a song number.
I am the priceless protector of this lost world.
Yep, Simon Pegg's bringing us his best Jack Sparrow impression. Happily re-established to have his terrible Disney Plus spin-off 7 years later. And yes, he also gets a love interest in said spin-off too. However, for what it is, this sequence is one of the more fun parts, with some really creative camera motion. Weird to say for an animated movie, particularly one of this tier. In fact, the thing that really isn't terrible at all throughout this movie is the animation itself. Because animation-wise, you can see how far Blue Sky has come since the original movie. Whether it's the physics of Scrat's outer space slapstick or action shots like this sequence here, it's all really solid work. The animation's not the problem, it's the script that it's animating. From this sequence, Buck then stumbles upon an ancient temple from a long-forgotten civilization. Wait, what? We're getting more insane Ice Age lore now? The ancient world has an ancient civilization in it? And the very next day, the herd exit their cave to see the slightly more hole-ridden world that the asteroids have left. Not quite a burning, uninhabitable furnace, but I'm guessing more asteroids are gonna happen. And then, quite conveniently, the hole to the dinosaur world is right next to the cave, making for a convenient spot for one Buck Wild to find them immediately. And if you're thinking we immediately get into the temple thing he's found, don't worry, he's first got to acquaint himself with all the characters who've joined in since the third movie. Or the couple who've stayed with the herd. Is the grandma dead now? Spoiler, she's not. She's with them too. Shame. She just isn't shown in any of the shots for a while, for some reason. Happened in the earlier scene too, where Julian first turned up. She just goes missing for half the scene.
Sweet eye patch. Very gangster.
I hate Julian. But then he does get on with it, his big prophecy stone having penetrated through the surface. But the explanation of this ridiculous plot device is pretty creatively done, with Buck wandering through the graphics on the stone as he's explaining it. Nothing new, but it's at least interesting to watch. The prophecy speaks of a reoccurring asteroid shower that's happened twice before, and you'll never guess when the next big one's coming up. Gotta appreciate that this is like the third time the Ice Age franchise has presented an apocalyptic event for kids. How can any 6-year-old go without some existential dread? Prepare to go the way of the mammoth, kid. In any case, it's a good job the dinosaurs survived the last one underground in this nonsense universe.
Even going underground won't save us this time.
Ah, this guy's got some legit knowing the plot armor going on here. However, not a threat, as Buck has a theory that there's a reason the asteroid goes to the same spot each time, and they should investigate what that is. And I thought the 7 different relationship arcs going on was already a lot. An ensemble issue best encapsulated by this shot of them all huddling together.
So, what do you think?
Again, 10 characters. Oh wait, no, Buck's here now. 11 principal characters. And Buck's probably the best one.
Don't listen to the weasel. He's a raving loon.
As they set out on this new quest, we get this epic group shot of the full overcrowded squad, before cutting back to the hole where those pterodactyl characters are crowbarred into the villain role for this movie. I don't actually know what species they're meant to be. They seem to be a bit of everything. The old Jurassic World make up the species special. Hey, if we're going with the reverse time theory, I guess they're just all ancestors of the dinosaurs we know. So it's just a weird warping of all of them. That's not how evolution works, but we'll run with it. And even more conveniently, they overheard everything said by the other characters, so they're all good to go. And their game plan here? That they will be the only ones to survive the asteroids because they can fly.
That seems highly implausible, just from a scientific standpoint.
I don't think that's the logic you have to worry about in this universe, kid. Though even if it did work, where's he thinking the food supply is going to come from? In any case, the outcome is that they actively have a motive to sabotage stopping the asteroid. Back to Scrat, and he's still flying about in the saucer. Again, not many notes here. It's pretty funny. I'm kind of glad they keep coming back to him. It could have just been a one and done at the start. Just great stuff overall. Honestly, I have no notes, and me talking at this point here is just an excuse for you to see a little bit of the shuffled footage of this sequence because, you got to enjoy the flawless scenes in terrible movies sometimes. You got to enjoy a little bit of the good in the middle of a lot of the bad. But anyway, back to the bad bits. And the family drama creeps back into this Earth-threatening plotline as well. Specifically, Peaches telling Julian that if they die, he was the one for her. You having fun, kids?
But maybe it's the universe telling us we won't.
Man, I can't believe the universe has decided to destroy all life on Earth just to tell the two mammoths they shouldn't get married. This franchise really does cover everything. We're getting the early forms of religion coming in too now. Nonetheless, Sid does some shtick about being their wedding planner. Kind of pedestrian dialogue for this movie at this point. Before we cut to Manny and Ellie continuing to argue about their anniversary thing, which they play out, but every line has to be prefaced with "if we survive." Domestic talk ensues before Buck discovers the asteroid bits are magnetic. And then
You are in my brain.
we are introduced properly to Neil DeBuck Weasel. Turns out he wasn't just narrating the opening. Another interesting way to reinforce the plot, and if the plot wasn't just complete gibberish, this would have been a great way to get some science in there for the kids too. But just to reiterate, this movie should not be an educational resource. And the plan from this point is to launch enough of the already fallen asteroids back into space to throw the big asteroid off course. Remember the first movie, when their job was to get a baby back to his dad? We're long gone from there. Hey there, thank you for making it to the halfway mark of this video. Come subscribe if you haven't already to keep up with terrible animated movies. We've done loads of these in the past, and we're doing loads more in the future. I love bad movies. Give us suggestions on our Discord. And yeah, let's get back to the second half of it. This stuff is just, great. Ironically great. However, Buck then sees that the bird dino family are following him, but rather than tell the others about this, he decides to redirect them into the forest instead as if he's done something wrong. They've somehow invoked the guilty party with a secret life plot line with a character that has nothing to be guilty about. Honestly, it's getting impressive, the writing at this point. This is some real gymnastics going on here. Also, despite going right past the entry point, the villains elect not to bother trying to follow them, accepting the forest as a safety zone that they can't follow them into.
They can't hide forever.
My friend, you literally just saw where they went in. Whatever, let's have more of the saber-toothed squirrel piloting a flying saucer. That's the good stuff anyway. I really would be down to just have a Scrat solo movie, devoid of all dialogue. And I actually enjoy the ridiculous way the moon's used to help the main cast. That's kind of smoothly done. Also just reminds us that Scrat's influence on the plot have been taken to a whole new level. He's basically become an interfering godlike figure in this movie. And I think they did consider a Scrat movie at one point. That's probably the best way you can take this, not Ice Age 6. As for the less creative options, this shot of Manny, Sid, and Diego puffing up in a line always looks off to me. It was the shot in the trailer that kind of put me off this movie, as well as the complete jumping the shark asteroid plot. However, considering the last movie was about Scrat splitting Pangea, can we really say this one was the one that jumped the shark? But yeah, this gag with the three of them kind of encapsulates the thin level of this movie's humor. They even have to then cut to Crash and Eddie laughing to try and pretend it was funny before, guess what? The same thing happens to them. Cinema, comedy. It just seems so awkwardly executed in how they all stand in a row, fake laughing until the zappening happens. It's very simple kids movie when previously these movies had been family movie, you know, with a lot of the same edge in both innuendo and pop culture references as the Shrek movies, but also carrying the plot of anything but a simple kids movie because they're in an electrical storm caused by Scrat sucking a storm out of Jupiter and flinging it to Earth. Man, this flying saucer is the most overpowered ship of all time. Following this, Manny and Ellie use the situation to gaslight Peaches into not leaving them. Great. Parenting.
Boy, Mother Nature sure is in a bad mood lately.
Some incredibly healthy parenting thrown in the mix there for you. Before the next obligatory insert of the villains comes to play ball. Briefly. And no, that doesn't kill them. Why would it? However, we do get the one moment that Granny character made me laugh.
I've been struck by lightning more times than you've had hot breakfasts.
Once again, the saving grace of this movie is some of the physical comedy. But not all of the character blocking sings. There's a really unconvincing sequence of family mammoths struggling to get out of an electrical force field. It's to kind of pad out the family drama with a bit of, hey look, it's all gone wrong because the parents got involved. But it feels like there wasn't exactly a right answer to the situation they were in either. We also get a fake Buck's dead moment that manages to be both rushed and played out simultaneously, which I didn't even think was possible.
He's gone.
Don't know how we'll go on without you, Buck. All right, let's go.
I feel like at some points he just had to pick a name out of a hat for which character gets the dialogue in each scene. But no, he's alive. And the bird dinosaurs are still being treated as this big looming secret that Buck has. Just tell them, my guy. And just to boot, suddenly Diego, I've forgotten about him, I've not mentioned him in so long, and Julian have established a bro code out of nowhere. With Julian continuing to sound like someone in their 40s trying to speak like a teenager.
Take it easy, my brother from a tiger mother.
And Diego's not much better.
Hasta mañana, J-Man.
I'm pretty sure this is the first interaction the two have actually had in the script for this movie. All in serving the everyone likes Julian except for Manny subplot. This poor guy has so many sub-dilemmas in this movie. He doesn't even have a minute to have a screen with Diego about it, with Ellie wondering to keep that balanced screen time for all of the characters rolling. With the planet's existence very much still on the table, they reckon this is a good time to camp up and get Manny and Julian to have some bonding time. Folks, there is no time to be had. The asteroid's coming. But no, it's time for...
It's the most yes. It's like yes with a bunch of S's.
Yes.
Where's this guy's family, by the way? Where did he come from? I saw he just popped out of a bush at the start of the movie and that was it. Oh well, just left his own family to die, I guess. I'll take it as canon, till Disney proves me wrong. I'm sure they'll be fine. The herd's gonna both save the world while still finding time for Manny and Julian to fail at playing hockey for a few minutes, whilst Ellie continues to gaslight her daughter about leaving.
In the woods, looking for food, and your baby gets sick. What do you do?
Whilst the rest of the cast elect to join in with the act for one mass manipulation, giving us this moment. I repeat, an asteroid is about to destroy the planet. Just sleep for a few hours and then crack on, please. Instead, both parents' plan go wrong and the big family falling out happens.
I see a sweet guy who's trying his hardest to impress you.
I disagree, but go on. And once again, every other sentence has to be prefixed with if we survive. I think we're way past 10 on the if we survive count. The if we survive lines are officially about to outnumber the core cast. On to a long night's sleep ahead of the ticking clock. Time for the Dino Bird villains to pop back up. This time with a bit of granny action.
Mess with Granny, get knocked on your fanny.
What? We get the industry standard Granny beats up the villain scene, though this time with her briefly trying to come out of Nick Offerman's butthole. And then something happens to her. However, the plot armor means it has to be an abduction. Whatever, trims the cast down by the grand total of one character for a bit, so at least there's that. We've gone from double digits to still double digits. Cut to morning, and the trails left by the incident lead Buck to once again pretend they don't exist, which, in fairness, is a problem this time as he knew what was going on.
So this whole time we've been chased by giant dino birds?
Just a little lesson on upfront communication, I guess. But also entirely unnecessary. Another arc to add on to far too many.
I didn't want to damage morale.
Whatever. It then turns out that the big bit of asteroid attracting the one in space was right in front of them. And it's a good job because they lost a lot of time with that long night's kip. Want to see them lose some more? Well, you're in luck, as the fate of the Earth is put on pause for Granny now, who they quickly find in the hands of another character. No! And he is very keen on Granny as it goes.
Making this beautiful sloth happy is all the payment I need.
And it turns out there's another underground society of animals in the Ice Age universe. This time, inside the asteroid, which I guess is the ploy to make the ethics of destroying it a little more complicated. Not that I can see a way that some mammoths and smaller mammals would be able to destroy a stadium-sized asteroid in the first place. Hang on a minute, it's been half a movie since Sid was trying to escape being the only original character who's single. Should we throw in a...
We've never had visitors.
And just in case you didn't get that she's a girl sloth, they've given her long hair and a dress. We're going old school character design logic here because there's too many other characters with your more unique forms to go with. At least Ellie and Peaches just have some subtle eyelashes. I think all female sloths we've seen throughout these movies have had long hair. But this is the first in the dress, so there you go. Also, just so you know, voiced by Jessie J. Why not? And within seconds, she spotted a piece of that Sid pie, ushering him over by unicorn because those are creatures in the Ice Age universe now. Whole generation of kids now thinking that unicorns were prehistoric species and that female sloth wore dresses. Also, as if it is needed to spell out what's happening here, the dialogue then literally does spell it out.
Sorry to interrupt this weirdo love connection.
And just as it sinks in that this sloth and Granny's bunny boy may be bloating the herd beyond 13 characters, we're introduced to yet another character, a Zen yoga llama.
Let us loosen our limbs and open our minds.
Oh boy. And unsurprisingly, his passive attitude is here to stop the asteroid prevention in its tracks. From which point the characters all accept they're gonna die.
Look on the bright side. We get to see our lives flash before our eyes.
Points for positivity, I guess? It's such a weird vibe, as all of the characters just start accepting death, but still in the light kids movie tone. Everyone's walking around saying, we had a good life, didn't we? Don't look up. This is the end of our franchise. 5 movies and this is the ending. Until Disney spoiled the fact that that's not. It almost sounds quaint in a way if it did go that way. Except Sid, who's taken the opportunity to think with his dandelion. Gotta get that last one of the season in, I guess, before the world ends. Agreeing to be her mate for life, Sid unwittingly discovers the solution to avoiding the apocalypse. So hopefully his brash love life decisions weren't just him not wanting to die single. Also the llama completely breaking his zen. Which I like to think all yoga instructors are just one bad day away from.
He meant well.
Who cares?
I kind of like that being called out, honestly. Also interesting that all the male animals grow beards. I guess with the females having long hair, facial hair for already furry animals wouldn't be off the table either. And at last, Buck devises his plan to stop the asteroid. It's to load the crystals from this one into the now smoking volcano. I figured something like that was coming. It feels like the plot of one of Andy's games in Toy Story, I'm afraid to say. I can hear it now. Woody, I'm gonna load all the asteroid crystals into the volcano, which will then fire into space at the other asteroid. But Buzz, you can't. It's the only way, Woody. Maybe that's it. They storyboarded this one by getting toys of the characters on the table and just move them around a little bit. Boom, 5th movie. Though this burn at the yoga llama's solid.
Get on board or go twist yourself into a pretzel and Nama stay out of our way.
Time for a sequence of some prehistoric animals, pensioner prehistoric animals included, turning a volcano into a giant cannon. Again, we've come a long way from that dying human mum desperately handing her child over to a mammoth. Emotional weight. Emotional lightweight. The scene itself is decent enough and does its job other than giving Crash and Eddie another cheerleading sequence leaning at the screen for the 3D release of the movie included, and that's not even forgetting what they actually say.
Hashtag asteroid! Hashtag, what does hashtag mean?
We're 2 for 2 now on the social media references invading this prehistoric movie. But again, trying to make a thing of that just feels redundant at this point. Let's go back to the MVP, shall we? Scrat is back in action, looking like he's about to save the day. No, he doesn't. He actually speeds up the asteroid. Whoops. And of course, despite all the crystals they've got in there, there's one last vital big crystal that needs to get sorted just in the nick of time, which would make this a really bad time for the dino birds to show up again. And they're a decent enough threat for the 3rd act, if only their motivation wasn't so forced and dumb. Nonetheless, even they then come to their senses and help out. You know, decent messaging for kids, I guess, but also, what? What is this plot? Instead divulging into a wholesome little working together scene until it goes wrong for Manny and Julian to get their working together self-sacrifice scene. To which Julian suddenly becomes an on-the-spot physics expert and manages to work out exactly where to roll this boulder. That works works out, and we get the final climax of the worst science lesson of all time play out before our very eyes. I'm looking forward to the generation who grew up with this, trying to prevent an asteroid collision by just chucking magnets into a volcano. Let's see how the real version goes in 2032. But in this world, at least, that completely plausible plan works, and the day is saved.
We did it.
We did it!
Time for a mammoth wedding, I guess. But first, Sid must say goodbye to his cougar girlfriend, and as it happens, his Wanda Sykes granny as well.
Are you kidding? This place is great.
At last, we're starting to trim down this damn cast. Right at the end of the 5th movie. Great. Useless now. But not before they all get their crystal youth back, Granny included, who even gets an afro out of the situation.
Hot tubbing just got a whole lot hotter.
Straight out of the books of Shakespeare. On to the wedding, and all the payoffs get just rammed in there. Diego and Shira are convinced they can have a kid after poor Shakira's had like 5 lines across the entire movie. I mean, that's just the thing, isn't it? Some of these characters were hooked into the big quest, but barely got a word in there. Like, justice for Shira. Instead of giving her a personality in this, we have had to have Crash and Eddie doing hashtag jokes instead. Couldn't they have all have stayed home or something? Like, she's the biggest victim of hangover additions from the 4th movie. She wouldn't have been cheap either for the little screen time she has. She's voiced by Jennifer Lopez. And as Peaches gets post-marital nerves, Manny gives her the dad talk about the first time they played hockey. A sentence that wouldn't seem that weird at a normal movie's wedding. Then you factor back in that this is a conversation between 2 mammoths. There's a sweet shot of the core characters all smiling at Peaches as she walks by, with the same music as the kid being handed back to his dad at the end of the 1st movie. Would have felt more earned in a better movie, but sure. In a way, it speaks to some of the missed opportunities of this franchise. Like if Manny had remembered the baby in the same way that Sully does with Boo, and that fed into the arc of him having Peaches in the first place. Not to mention his dead original family that doesn't really come up in the later movies. He had a kid already. Or was he the kid? I guess he was the kid, but still. Raising Peaches from birth to sending her away has a lot more scope when considering all of that, but what am I kidding? I can't be expecting stuff like that from these movies. But for what it is, I didn't think they could mess up this scene. And yet...
I do.
Most deaf.
I think his character wouldn't have been as annoying if they hadn't tried to do the whole down with the kids vibe to his dialogue. Also, I ask again, where's his family in all of this? Does he have his own Manny backstory and his overcompensating positivity is due to suppressed trauma? What if he is Manny's original child? That only raises some big problems. Which one was Manny anyway? Don't worry about it. Sid can have his girlfriend after all, now that she's young again. And she has a whole song number to hammer that point home.
Oh, Sid.
Which is our cue for the Despicable Me / every animated movie end dance sequence. But this time with mammoths. And even the bad guys are joining along. A classic kids movie ending. We would roll credits here, but of course there's a Scrat to check in on first. Truly, if anything, the last official true ending. How does it go? And with the return of Buck DeGrasse Weasel, we learn that Scrat is the one who destroyed all life on Mars. And I can't be mad with that being the end of the movie. We're so beyond stupidity at this point. I've got to applaud them for getting that in there at the end as well. And that was the terrible Ice Age Collision Course. A movie that only happens when you begin running out of ideas, and then you made 2 more movies. There are certainly a lot worse movies out there, and at least the animation and the Scrat sequences are pretty great, but making a whole movie so you can justify the Scrat bits just isn't the way you should be doing things. And I think the declining quality across the whole series up to this one is what particularly makes it a terrible movie. Throughout this, I've just looked back at what a gem the original was, and there were really 2 directions they could have gone with this franchise, and I can't help but think they took the wrong one. Though I do enjoy the second one, that's the point where they started setting themselves up to the task of having each movie with some sort of cataclysmic event, as well as an extending cast. Whether global warming and flooding, a dinosaur underworld, the continent splitting, and now of course asteroids, God knows what they're planning for the 6th. From the second movie on, they set the precedent that the Ice Age of the movie's namesake just wasn't enough, and they'd have to start inventing new things for each movie. I can't help but think that if we'd kept the threat to the natural world of the Ice Age period and human tribes hunting the animals and that kind of thing, there would have been some more interesting stories to tell with that. Imagine if he'd still met Ellie in the second movie, but in that kind of environment. Raised Peaches in a world where mammoths are actively being hunted. I mean, that was the core of the Manny character in the first movie. How does he feel about having a child again if he's not the child from that cave drawing? I keep bringing it up. There are so many interesting seeds planted in that first movie, yet their takeaway was the flying saucer. I don't know, it just seems doomed from the start. Really, they were on a high up until Ice Age 3. 4 is where the quality had fallen off a cliff and they lost the trust from their audience. And 5 was just so beyond poor that it really was the real killer of Blue Sky Studios. Or at least, that's my crazy take. Let's see if big bad Disney can fix it. I ain't got a lot of hopes though. What do you think? For now though, I'd best end it off there. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Do tell me your thoughts on Ice Age 5 and where Ice Age 6 was going. And I shall see you all in a little bit.
Don't ever do that again.